Welcome to Creatively Exposed, a podcast and safe space for Black and marginalized creatives to empower, educate, and uplift you through the final product of self and creation. Bring a homie, share with a homie, and enjoy the show.
Your book, I didn't get through the whole thing, but I basically want to do it like this where, if no one's ever met you and have no idea what you do, give it to us. Like,
Sure.
Who are you? What are your passions? What excites you? Your creative work, your I saw different kinds of work that you do. So just the stage is yours.
Sure. Okay. All right. I'm going to get you to guide me though.
Okay, sure. I guess first of all, what is your name? And what is your biggest passion?
Sure. My name is Valerie Mason John, aka Queenie. That was my stage name. Mm-hmm. And some people, or many people, know me by Vimalasara, which is my Buddhist name. So you can see I've been on this journey, but there is this integration. My passion, it's such a great question. I think right now my passion is the uplift of Black people. I don't know how long I've got left on this planet, and I just think, you know what, it really has to be the uplift of Black people and Indigenous people, people of color, because I'm at that place of where my legacy, it's like there are so many of us in the community are doing this work, but how can we uplift that next generation coming up so that work can continue? Because there's still so much work to do, as we know. It's like I'm the legacy of my slave ancestors. I'm of slave stock. Mason John is a very slave name, Sierra Leonean slave name, Creole. So really, honestly, that is my passion, and that's a really interesting question because I'm ordained into a Buddhist lineage which is predominantly white, and it's been really great actually with the crap that has been happening over this past year, that those of us who are in the community have just really started creating spaces for ourselves and creating spaces so that more Black Indigenous people of color can come into our community. But even outside of my community, I'm doing so much in my community. So that's my passion, really, is to leave something behind so that the Black Indigenous people of color community can benefit and continue to flourish. We flourish in particular pockets, but we know that there's just so many microaggressions to our community. I'm going to look specifically at the Black community. Just in terms of the mass incarceration of our community, be it if we're in prisons or if we're in mental health institutions, or if we're not in the prisons or mental health institutions, we're on the streets, and for me, I've just got to this point is stop telling me that Black people kill Black people. Let's ask why our youth killing each other. What's that legacy? That's what we need to be really looking at, So that's my passion. Yeah.
And what are the ways that you practice uplifting and being within that passion?
Well, there's a project that I'm working on. It's and hopefully working on a project where we are developing a mindfulness course created by Black and Indigenous people of color for Black and Indigenous people of color.
Yeah. I love that.
Because we know that in our communities there's a withdrawing back from mindfulness because mindfulness is for the privileged, mindfulness is for the wealthy, mindfulness is for white people, mindfulness is Buddhist. And what I want to say is that mindfulness is our birthright. And so what we need to be doing is secularizing mindfulness. Yes, there are Buddhist leanings towards mindfulness, but if we look in the Christian tradition, the Christian tradition had meditation, and mindfulness is about coming home to the body, is becoming aware of the body and becoming aware of the breath. And right now, today, the breath, being able to breathe, has become a political act.
Yes.
Yeah. And we need to reclaim that. The breath should not be a political act. If we look at who's been impacted mostly by COVID, whether we are in the States or if we're in Canada or if we're in England or whatever, it's the Black people of color communities, the Indigenous communities. And then, of course, we know that we go to Eric Garner, we go to George Floyd, we can roll out a whole list of people begging to have the breath.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So that's one of the things that I'm working with, and we've had support for that. I don't really want to say too much about that, but that's definitely in the works. And really, to say this isn't about profiling, the superstars. This is about leaving something for the community, so that when my dead behind me, it's like we will have mindfulness for us. And so again, part of the uplift of Black Indigenous people of colour is making things culturally specific, things that have been considered just for white people. How do we make these things culturally specific? I have a new book coming out next year. And again, I was working with a publisher, had this idea for a book, and I was at the second gathering of Black Buddhist scholars and yogi teachers up at Spirit Rock last year. It was amazing. There was over 80 of us who came together. We had Alice Walker to greet us, in the presence of Alice Walker. And at the end, when the community spread to or mushroomed to over 300, 400 people, so we invited people who, again, this was just for Black people of African descent, those who have an interest in Buddhism or mindfulness in that spirituality. They came together at Spirit Rock, and we had Angela Davis and Jan Willis in conversation with us. And that was such an amazing event. But when we were together just as teachers, as scholars, there was this younger generation. How do we get published? How do we get published? And I just thought, well, I have a doorway into that. I tell you what, Liz, I was never, ever going to edit another anthology again. I edited the first national anthology of African Canadian poetry called The Great Black North. It was like stalking, if you want to be an editor, it's almost like stalking.
That's a wonderful way to say
that's it. That's part of your job description. And I was just like, I'm just so done. I'm not going to do this again. But there was just this call. There was a couple of brilliant papers in that conference, which I just thought, yes. And so initially it was going to be a book by Black Buddhists, but my publisher was really great. When they saw the material of 3 sample chapters, they said, open this up. And that was great to open the window up. So the book is called African Wisdom, New Voices Taught Black Liberation, Buddhism and Beyond. And I have over 33 contributors from the US, from Canada, from England. And And I'm hoping, and again, I won't say this on air, but I'm hoping to do something very different in terms of editing the anthology, in terms of the contributors, but I'll leave it there. So I'm very excited. There's some great material from Rastafarianism, you know, to Ubuntu, to the cradle of mindfulness, to Black Lives Matter, to, you know, so it's an eclectic bunch of articles. And so again, for me, that is a part, you know, about me being really passionate. And then again, I suppose I've always been passionate. I can remember when I got to my third book and I thought, I'm not going to have another book with the word black in it. You know, it's like Making Black Waves. That was the first book that I co-wrote with Anne Kambata, which was the first book to document the lives of African and Asian lesbians in Britain. And then I edited a book which was called Talking Black. You know? And then the next book was like Brown Girl in the Ring. That was a collection of my short stories and plays. It was like, no, I can't have another book with black in it, but so be it. So I think my work has, all on an unconscious level, it was about the uplift of my people, but it's more conscious now. And in fact, there's a podcast that was released today by the by the National Theatre, promoting Black UK writers, Black queer UK writers, and I live in Canada, and I was contacted. Can we use this? You know, we want to profile this, and I listened to it. And this was a play that I had written in the 90s called Sin Dykes. It was a box office sellout. It was a play for 3 black women, 3 white women, and discussing sexual politics, discussing S&M between black and white women, discussing, you know, what does it mean to be in these biracial relationships. I couldn't believe it when I listened to the snippet that they had. I could have written it today. Yeah. You know, when it's talking about the black people who had been killed in the streets, and I was just completely stunned. So again, my work, I wrote a pantomime called The Adventures of Snow Black and Rose Red, juxtaposing Anansi with Carly. So the daughters are Snow Black and Rose Red get lost in the woods. And Carly comes to protect them, and Anansi, the trickster, tries to lure them away. And that was just amazing, actually. I think sometimes writing plays, I haven't written plays for quite a while, but when you write plays and you're in the audience and you just hear the reaction of people watching it, and that was just amazing, the reaction of young kids and adults just having these positive role models before them. So
exciting. Wow.
Yeah. So that's part of my passion, and I suppose the book that came out this year was a real, for me, that was written out of passion, because often it's said, well, what are Buddhist practitioners doing during moments of uprising? What are we doing? Are you just sitting on your cushion meditating? And it's a great question, and because I realize it's a privilege for me. It's a privilege because I have meditation, I have the Dharma, and so in a way, there's a way that I can be. There are people who are in those uprisings who don't have the meditation, who don't have the Dharma. And I'm not saying that's wrong, because of course, I can be out there in the uprisings, but what I can do is offer something for those people who are on the streets and be a place of refuge. And I have been out on the streets. I mean, during the days of free Nelson Mandela and you boycotted South African fruit, I'd be going up to the market, where's that fruit from? Oh, it's from South Africa, and just throw all the fruit on the floor of the market, you know, of the stall holders, and super gluing banks so people couldn't put their